How good can Georgia's defensive line be in 2025? That's what we're talking about in today's video. And I think it's an interesting topic because there's a lot of question marks out there about Georgia's defensive line. And I totally get it, right? There's a lot of new faces that need to step up and play, guys who need to stay healthy if Georgia's going to have a great defensive line. And at the end of the day, there is a standard on Georgia's defensive line that you just don't see across college football, right? When they were winning titles in 21 and 22, they had an elite defensive line, one of the best in program history. And that 21 group especially was one of the best defensive lines we've ever seen in college football, right? Now, they took a small step backwards the next year in 2022, but it was still elite and still one of the best defensive lines in college football. So those two groups were outstanding. They were pretty good in 2023, but it was still a step down from 22. And last year, they were really good at times, but they were too inconsistent. And I'm not sure you could call them elite, right? There were still games where they were getting run on. They weren't getting to the quarterback as much as we've seen in the past. So they took another step backwards last year. This year, I think there are people out there who think they could take another step backwards. I'm not so sure. I think this group could be better than people think. And we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about basically each player, where they could play this year, what their role could be. And we're going to talk about Kirby Smart's comments about this group from the spring. Here's what Kirby had to say, I believe on April 1st, maybe a week or two before Georgia's G-Day scrimmage. He said, "I've seen improvement from that group," talking about the defensive line. "I think Trey Scott does a tremendous job with his group. We've not had Kristen Miller out there, obviously with the surgery, so there's been a lot of young guys getting work. I've really been impressed with Nnamdi Ogboko, Jordan Thomas, and Nazir Johnson, guys I'm going to talk about in just a minute. They're working their tail off to get better. They're buying in. They've seen what Trey Scott has done with guys in their second year, with guys in their third year, and then guys in their fourth year do really, really well here. So they're buying into that. And if you're a Georgia fan, you have to love that comment because there's a lot of players in this group that are second-year players that have been with the program now. A lot of them have, completed their second spring back in the spring. They're getting ready to start their fall camp for the second time. This is a big deal. Second-year players usually take a big step forward. And then, we still have some experienced guys there who should continue to get better. And if they stay healthy, this defensive line, I think, could be one of the best in the SEC and play to that standard that we usually see from this group. I do think it all kind of starts with Kristen Miller and Jordan Hall, guys that need to stay healthy. These are guys who are leaders on the defense and are doing everything they can to stay healthy and be the players that the Georgia staff thinks they could be, the players that I think that they could be, and everyone watching this video, right? Kristen Miller was part of that 22 class. This is year 4 for him. He started in 10 games last year, played in 12, 6'4", 305, has the quickness and the ability to shed blocks and get in the backfield and make some plays. He is a guy that, everyone is kind of looking up to. I think he could be one of the best defensive linemen in the SEC. He's a strong interior guy, really good run stopper who has shown flashes of being able to get to the quarterback. If he is at his best and he keeps improving and he stays healthy, I think he's going to make a lot of plays next fall. There's no reason why he shouldn't, right? And then there's Jordan Hall, the former 5-star. He's got size, he's got power, he's explosive off the line, but another guy who hasn't really played a ton of significant minutes because he's dealt with some injury issues. He was not fully there in the spring. I think he was getting healthier and healthier, started to practice better as the spring progressed, but this might be the most important player on Georgia's defensive line because I think he has a higher ceiling and has the potential to be a better player at his best than Kristen Miller. So if Jordan Hall is healthy all season long, which is tough to ask, but he has a chance to be an elite defensive lineman in year 3 for him. If he can stay healthy, he's got the makings to be a game changer. Loved him out of high school. There's a reason Georgia pushed hard for him. And I think he has a bright NFL future if he can just stay healthy and continue on the path that others have before him. Trey Scott knows what he's doing with these guys. They all get better and better. A lot of it is just health. And I think we're going to talk about that a lot with this defensive line. If they're healthy, this could be a really strong group. But Jordan Hall, definitely got to keep an eye on. Xavier McLeod, a guy kind of flying under the radar. He played a little bit. Remember, he was the transfer from South Carolina. He's 6'4", 315, so he's got size, experience, and I think the staff is really high on him. There are a lot of people around the program who think he is going to have a really, really big season, so definitely a guy to keep an eye on. But then you've got those young guys that Kirby talked about, guys who are in their second year. Joseph Jonah Ajanye, a former five-star that they landed from Texas. He is 6'4", 275. He actually played a decent bit early in the season. Wasn't great against Kentucky. I think that was his welcome to the SEC, welcome to college football moment. He got driven backwards a few times, if my memory is correct, but he plays hard. He's got a high ceiling. He's only going to get better. And another guy who got injured early in the season and missed a decent part of last year. Did play as a freshman. He got his feet wet, but then got injured. If he stays healthy, which is the theme for a lot of these guys, I think the staff is really high on him. He's got a chance to start this year and maybe in year 3 as well. But a guy who is lean, muscular, I think he's got his best football ahead of him. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on. I think could have a really big season. Excuse me. After that, you've got Nazir Johnson, who I looked up his size. He's listed at 6'6", 340. This is a guy that came to Georgia right at 300 pounds, 305, 310 at his heaviest. Out of Dublin High School. So when he was getting to Georgia as a recruit, he was right around that 300-pound range, a little bit more. Georgia lists him at 340. So I don't know what exactly he's been eating, but he has been putting on weight. And he came to Athens as a really athletic defensive lineman. Tremendous athlete for someone 300 pounds. Now he's 340, right? So if he can keep that quickness and that athleticism that he brought to the table, if he can do that at 340, this guy could be a real problem for opposing offensive linemen. So he was a small town kid from Dublin who chose Georgia over Florida, still flying under the radar, but in his second year, putting on all this weight, this is definitely a guy that I have my eye on. Jordan Thomas is another guy. He played early, I think made a big play against Texas Tech early in the season as a freshman. Another guy who moves extremely well. He's 6'5", 315. So another quick, powerful guy in the middle who is, has a chance to earn some real minutes and earn some playing time this year. He may not start, but he's going to push guys like Christian Miller and Jordan Hall and Xavier McLeod in front of him. If any one of those guys are unable to stay healthy, Jordan Thomas, I think, has a chance to slide in there and play some big-time minutes. Nnamdi Agboko, another guy, 340 pounds, right? Eventually, one of these 330, 340-plus pound guys need to make an impact and say, okay, this is my job. I'm this nose guard. I'm taking on the double teams. I'm making things easier for the linebackers. Maybe the best linebacker group in the country to make plays, right? Those guys will be at their best when they've got a guy just holding his own and stopping the run and, making sure he's filling those gaps and, just eating space. That's what those guys need to do. Take on blocks, eat space, and make things easier for everyone around them. So if that's Nazir Johnson, if that's Nnamdi Agboko, or one of the guys who are only 315, 320 pounds, maybe it's one of those guys, but eventually I think they would like one of these big, heavy guys to be that anchor in the middle. That's going to make things easier for everyone else around him. So Joseph Jonah Ajanye, Nazir Johnson, Jordan Thomas, Nnamdi Agboko, those are all the second-year players that have a chance to step their game up and really make an impact this year. Then, of course, you have the freshmen, Elijah Griffin, J.J. Hand. Elijah Griffin is the five-star, top 5 prospect in the country. I do think we're going to see him play. I think he's added some weight too. He's 6'4", 310, another guy who is around that 300-pound range. So he's listed at a solid 310. Flash this spring, we heard from several sources like, okay, the hype is real with this kid. He is the real deal. He is the 5-star we thought he could be, coming off just a tremendous high school career. There was a reason he was a 5-star prospect and the #1 defensive lineman in the country. I'm not sure he's starting anytime soon with these guys ahead of him, but he is the real deal from what we're hearing. He is going to play, especially early on against those 2 cupcakes to start the season. He needs a big fall camp to show the staff that, he can go through a tough fall camp and he can hold his own and can get better and better. But he obviously has a bright future ahead of him. He will start at some point. I'd be shocked if he didn't. Might just not be this year. Could be a sophomore, junior season where he really thrives. But he has the potential to be one of the best defensive line prospects, or just overall players in the country. But he's a freshman who's going to push the guys ahead of him. There's no doubt. He is extremely talented. And then J.J. Hand, 6'4", 290, a guy still learning the game. He's from Germany, but lean frame, really good athlete for 290, kind of a blank canvas. Trey Scott has an opportunity to make this guy a big-time player if he can just continue learning the game, working on the fundamentals, the technique. But again, he's got a high ceiling and just might take some time, but he is a player that I think the staff is really high on. So at the end of the day, a lot of promise. This group has to stay healthy. If they can, I think they could surprise a lot of people and be the anchor to a defensive line that is trying to get back to being at an elite level. I still think there's a chance they could absolutely do that. I think the defense in general could be better than people think, especially that defensive line. Again, talent all over the place, a lot of young, hungry, talented guys who are hoping to make an impact this year. If they do, Georgia's defensive line could be one of the best in the SEC once again. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something, and I'll see you over on Dawg Post.